Big Hit CEO scolds Jungkook for rejecting the new concept, but Taehyung stands up and says, "If he's forced, I'll be the first to leave." Tension rises when Jungkook refuses a provocative new concept, and Taehyung takes a stand for his friend. What will happen next in BTS's fight for identity? If you force him to become someone he's not, then I'll be the first to leave. You can cut two people from a poster. The room fell deathly silent. Every pair of eyes turned towards Taehyung, who stood tall in the middle of the conference room, his voice cool and unwavering. The tension was palpable, thick enough to choke the air. Even the CEO of Big Hit Entertainment, usually unshaken and composed, froze for a moment. Jungkook, who had been quietly sitting off to the side, felt his heart pounding in his chest. He could barely breathe, yet he knew the storm that was brewing in the room was inevitable. The CEO, a man in his 40s with a reputation for being professional to a fault, glanced at Taehyung with a look of disbelief. "Taehyung," the CEO's voice was low, yet sharp, like a warning. "You know the stakes. This isn't just about him. This is about the group's future." Taehyung's gaze never wavered. His eyes, usually soft and full of mischief, were now hard as steel. "The group's future is nothing if we're not true to ourselves," he replied, his tone cutting through the air. "If Jungkook is forced to be someone he's not, then what are we anymore? This isn't BTS. If you make him change, I'll leave. You can keep the concept, but we won't be part of it." For a moment, no one spoke. The air hung heavy, thick with unspoken words and the weight of what was happening. The staff, who had grown accustomed to dealing with high-pressure situations, now found themselves at a loss for words. The tension in the room was so thick that even the usual sounds of pens scratching paper and papers shuffling were conspicuously absent. The CEO took a deep breath, his posture stiffening as he processed Taehyung's words. "Taehyung, this is professional. You know what's at stake. The company, the brand, the future of BTS, it all depends on this comeback." Jungkook, who had been silent up until now, could feel the heat of everyone's gaze on him. He had never imagined it would come to this. He had never wanted to disappoint anyone, least of all his bandmates. But the concept that Big Hit had pushed forward, it wasn't him. It wasn't Jungkook. It was dark, provocative, and crossed lines that he wasn't willing to cross. I can't do it," Jungkook said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's not me. I can't be a part of something like this." "Jungkook, this is professional integrity. It's what the industry expects," the CEO shot back, frustration creeping into his voice. "Do you want to be the one to throw all of this away for your personal feelings?" Jungkook bit his lip, his eyes downcast. The pressure was immense. He had always been the one who gave his all for BTS, but this time it felt like too much. He wasn't sure if he could follow through with something that felt so wrong to his core. And then, in that moment of unbearable silence, Taehyung's voice rose again, breaking through the tension like a thunderclap. "If you force him to change, then I'm out too," Taehyung said firmly, his voice low but undeniable. "You can cut us both from the poster, but I will not stand by and watch him lose himself." Everyone in the room froze. The CEO, usually so poised, seemed momentarily stunned. He stared at Taehyung, searching for a crack in his resolve, but found none. Taehyung stood tall, unmoving, his eyes never leaving the CEO's. For a moment, the world outside the conference room seemed to vanish. It was as if the building itself held its breath. Jungkook felt his chest tighten, unsure of what to do, but at the same time, his heart swelled with a strange sense of relief. Taehyung had just drawn a line in the sand, and he had done it for him. The CEO, still silent, took a slow breath, as though weighing the consequences of what had just transpired. His gaze flicked to the other members of BTS, whose expressions ranged from shock to quiet contemplation. Finally, without a word, the CEO turned and walked out of the room, his footsteps echoing as the door slammed shut behind him. The room was still. Not a sound could be heard, except for the distant hum of the building. The staff, who had witnessed countless meetings like this before, found themselves uncertain, lost for words. No one had ever seen BTS take such a bold stand. Not like this. Jungkook slowly raised his head to look at Taehyung, who stood beside him, the same calm expression still on his face. But Jungkook could see the depth of emotion in his eyes. Taehyung wasn't just standing up for him. He was standing up for everything BTS represented. "Why did you do that?" Jungkook finally whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You know what this could mean, right?" Taehyung smiled softly, though there was a sadness in his gaze. "I know, but I also know that if we lose ourselves for the sake of some concept, then we're not BTS anymore. We're just another group following orders." Jungkook felt a lump in his throat. For the first time in a long while, he didn't feel so alone. He didn't feel like he had to carry this burden on his own. Taehyung had his back, no matter what. The next day, the news broke. Fans of BTS, known as ARMY, quickly rallied behind Jungkook and Taehyung. Hashtags like #ProtectJungkook and #ThankYouTaehyung began trending worldwide. Fans flooded Big Hit's social media accounts with support, demanding that the company respect the members' wishes. It was clear ARMY was with them, and the support was overwhelming. Big Hit, under mounting pressure, eventually relented. They revised the concept, giving Jungkook and Taehyung the freedom to shape it into something that felt true to who they were. The music video, when it was released, broke records, becoming one of the most successful in BTS's career. But more importantly, it became a symbol of the strength that comes from standing together, from choosing authenticity over fame, and from protecting one another even when the world tries to tear them apart. The room was suffocatingly silent. Every eye was on Taehyung, whose words had shattered the tension that had been thickening for minutes. "If you force him to change into someone he's not, then I'll leave first," Taehyung declared, his voice calm, yet undeniably forceful. "You can take two of us off the poster, but we'll leave together. No BTS without Jungkook." The Big Hit CEO, who had been pacing the room moments ago, suddenly froze. His sharp eyes locked with Taehyung's, and for a brief moment, it was as if time itself stood still. Everyone in the room held their breath, waiting for a response, but none came. Even the staff, normally unfazed by meetings like this, now exchanged uneasy glances. Jungkook, who had been sitting quietly, shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his heart racing. He had been prepared for conflict, but not like this. Not with Taehyung, who had just risked everything to defend him. The weight of the moment was heavy, and yet there was a strange sense of relief flooding through him. Taehyung was standing up for him. He wasn't alone. But then So spoke, his voice steady but tinged with frustration. "This isn't just about him, Taehyung. It's about the group. The industry expects us to evolve. This concept, this comeback, it's crucial for BTS. You understand that, right?" Taehyung's expression didn't falter. And BTS is nothing without its members being true to themselves. If you want to change Jungkook into someone he isn't, then you're not asking for a comeback. You're asking for betrayal. And that's something we won't stand for. The CEO's eyes darkened. He was a man known for his unshakable resolve. But for the first time, he hesitated. "You're making this difficult for all of us. Do you really think you can just walk away from everything we've built?" Taehyung didn't flinch. "Yes. If it means losing ourselves, then it's not worth it." The silence in the room stretched, becoming unbearable. No one dared speak, not even the staff. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the CEO took a slow breath, looking at Taehyung one last time. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing ominously as the door swung shut behind him. The air in the room remained thick, but a shift had occurred. Taehyung had spoken, and in doing so, he had drawn a line in the sand. And Jungkook, who had been so torn just moments before, now found himself breathing easier, though his mind was still swirling. Jungkook looked up at Taehyung, who was standing by his side, his back straight and his jaw set with determination. "Why did you do that?" Jungkook whispered, his voice trembling slightly, both from the tension of the moment and the overwhelming support he was suddenly receiving. "You knew this could ruin everything for us." Taehyung gave him a soft smile, though his eyes held a deeper understanding. "Because it would ruin us more if we lost ourselves. I'm not going to sit back and watch you change for a concept that's not you. It's not worth it." Jungkook let out a breath, a feeling of warmth spreading in his chest. It was as if, for the first time in a long while, he wasn't alone in carrying the weight of this decision. Taehyung had always been his closest friend, but now, more than ever, Jungkook felt the strength of their bond. Taehyung's defiance was not just about rejecting the concept. It was about protecting their integrity, and he had chosen to stand by Jungkook, no matter the cost. The next day, the news broke. Fans of BTS, known as ARMY, quickly rallied behind their idols. Social media exploded with support for both Jungkook and Taehyung. Hashtags like #ProtectJungkook and #ThankYouTaehyung began trending worldwide. Fans flooded Big Hit's social media, demanding that the agency respect the members' wishes and abandon the controversial concept. ARMY support was overwhelming. It didn't take long for Big Hit to realize that their choices weren't just about business. They were about people. The power of BTS's bond with their fans was undeniable. Under the immense pressure, Big Hit finally made an announcement. The concept would be adjusted to align more with the members' personal styles and comfort levels. Jungkook and Taehyung would be given more creative control over the project, and the comeback would reflect the true essence of BTS: authenticity over provocation. When the music video was released, it was an instant success. It garnered record-breaking views and became one of the most talked-about videos in BTS's entire career. The members stood proud of the work they had put into it, knowing that it represented them. Not some manufactured image, but their true selves. The door to the conference room clicked shut with a chilling finality. The echoes of the CEO's footsteps still lingered in the hallways, but inside the room, it was as though time had frozen. Jungkook, heart still racing, sat motionless. The weight of what had just happened seemed to settle over him in waves that he looked at Taehyung, his best friend, the one person who had just risked everything, his career, his image, his position within the group, just to stand by him. Jungkook could barely grasp the magnitude of what Taehyung had done, and yet, the words that came to his mind were simple. Why? Taehyung met his gaze with a faint, almost sorrowful smile. Because you're my friend, and you're not alone in this. Never will be. Jungkook's throat tightened. For months, he had wrestled with the dilemma of whether or not to speak up, knowing that rejecting the concept would make him an outcast in a company and industry that valued conformity above all else. But now, Taehyung had given him something invaluable: permission to stand firm, to choose himself. But it wasn't just about him anymore. Taehyung's voice brought him back to the present. We have to be careful. This might not be over. Jungkook nodded slowly, his mind already racing ahead. He had felt the tension building ever since the concept for the new comeback was revealed. Big Hit's expectations were clear. This was going to be their most daring, most controversial project yet. But it was a concept that clashed with everything Jungkook believed. It wasn't just the provocative nature of the concept. It was the violation of his boundaries, his identity. The idea of transforming into something he wasn't, just to appease a market, felt like a betrayal. But what was more frightening was the possibility that no one would understand, that he would be alone in his resistance. Until Taehyung, we can't let this slide. Taehyung continued, his voice low but filled with conviction. I've seen how they treat us when we bend. They don't care about our voices, only the brand, the image. Jungkook turned to him, his gaze softening. But what happens now? What will they do to us? Taehyung didn't immediately answer. Instead, he stared out of the window, his face reflecting the quiet intensity that always lay beneath his playful exterior. After a long pause, he finally spoke, his voice almost a whisper. They'll try to break us. They'll apply pressure, use every tactic they can to get us to conform. But they can't break us if we don't let them. Jungkook's stomach twisted at the thought. He had seen firsthand how Big Hit operated. There was no room for dissent, no space for rebellion. They had always been a team, but this was different. This was personal. And as much as he hated it, Jungkook knew the truth. The agency wouldn't stop until they had complete control, that a knock at the door pulled them both from their thoughts. Jungkook's heart skipped a beat as the door opened slightly, and one of the staff members poked their head in. Jungkook, Taehyung, the CEO has requested to see you both again. In his office. Taehyung's face hardened, the easy smile fading from his lips. He stood, his movements deliberate. Looks like it's not over yet. The CEO's office was cold, meticulously arranged, and completely impersonal. The sterile environment made Jungkook feel even more like a cog in a machine that was rapidly beginning to grind him down. Taehyung, ever the opposite of what the CEO's office represented, stepped inside with an air of defiance. That Big Hit CEO sat at his massive desk, his fingers steepled in front of his mouth. His cold, calculating gaze swept over both Jungkook and Taehyung as they entered. The door clicked shut behind them, and an almost suffocating silence filled the room. "You've made things complicated," the CEO began, his tone icy. "I don't appreciate being forced into a corner like this. You both understand what's at stake, don't you?" Taehyung didn't flinch. "We're not here to discuss your concept. We're here to discuss our integrity. We will not be pushed into something that goes against who we are." The CEO's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "And what do you expect me to do, Taehyung? Do you honestly think I'm going to let the future of BTS be derailed by two of its members' personal grievances? Do you think ARMY will support this? They'll follow what we tell them." Jungkook felt the sting of his words. His heart skipped a beat, but Taehyung wasn't backing down. "They will follow us because we are real," Taehyung replied firmly. "Not because we've been molded into something we're not. And if you think you can control us with threats, then you've underestimated BTS." The tension in the room crackled. Jungkook could feel the weight of it, and for the first time in his life, he realized how much power they truly held, how much power they had never fully understood. The Big Hito leaned forward, his voice lowering to a dangerous calm. "You may have fans, but they're not the ones who keep this company running. I am. And if you think you can define me without consequences, you are gravely mistaken." Taehyung's eyes narrowed. "Then let the consequences come, because we won't change for you." The room seemed to freeze. The air felt thick, almost unbearable, but Jungkook couldn't look away. He had never seen Taehyung this serious, this resolute. And something about the way he stood there, unwavering, made Jungkook feel braver. For the first time in years, Jungkook realized something. The concept wasn't the fight. The fight was their identity. And it was one that, no matter the cost, they couldn't afford to lose. With a final, tense glance, the CEO waved his hand dismissively. "We'll see where this leads. But remember, your choices come with consequences." Jungkook and Taehyung turned to leave, but as they reached the door, Taehyung stopped, turning back to the CEO. "And if you think we're the only ones who have a say, think again. This is BTS. We all stand together. Always." As they stepped into the hallway, the door slammed shut behind them. The uncertainty of the battle ahead loomed, but for the first time in a long while, Jungkook felt ready to face it. The tension was suffocating as the Big Hit CEO's cold eyes swept over Jungkook and Taehyung. After the shocking confrontation, where Taehyung had boldly declared, "If you force him to change into someone he's not, I'll leave first," the atmosphere in the room turned heavy. For a moment, the CEO's sharp gaze softened with frustration, but he made no response. Without another word, he turned and left, leaving the two young men standing in the silence of the aftermath. Jungkook, overwhelmed by the support, whispered, "Why did you do that?" His voice trembled as the weight of Taehyung's decision settled in. "You knew this could ruin everything." Taehyung's smile was faint but resolute. "Because you're my friend, and I'm not going to let you fight this battle alone." The CEO's reaction wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Over the next days, the air around BTS grew tense. The staff whispered among themselves, and Big Hit's executives were watching closely. Despite their global success, the members were not above pressure. Rumors began to swirl, and it was clear that Big Hit was willing to do whatever it took to push BTS into this new, controversial image. Taehyung and Jungkook stood firm, but the stakes were high. The CEO called them in again, and this time, he was more direct. "You're making things difficult," he said icily. "Do you really think you can defy the company without consequences?" Taehyung remained unflinching, his voice filled with quiet conviction. "If BTS is forced to become something it's not, it's no longer BTS. Fans follow us because of who we are, not because we've been molded into something we're not. The CEO's response was cold, but Taehyung's words were undeniable. You think you're replaceable, Taehyung said, stepping closer, but we're not. Fans don't just follow a brand, they follow us, who we truly are. The tension escalated further when one of Big Hit's higher-ups dropped an ultimatum. If Jungkook refused to comply with the new concept, his role would be drastically reduced. The threat hung over Jungkook like a sword, and for a moment, doubt crept in. Could he really defy them? Could he risk losing everything? But Taehyung's unwavering support gave him strength. We won't lose ourselves. We fight this together. When the day came for their final confrontation, Jungkook and Taehyung walked into the CEO's office, both with a sense of resolve. The CEO's face was hard, as if expecting them to bend. I warned you, he said, his tone colder than ever. But it seems you've made your choice. We'll see how this ends for you. The silence in the room was deafening. Jungkook's heart pounded, but he knew what he had to do. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. Together, with Taehyung by his side, they would face whatever came next. Outside, the fans were already showing their support, with hashtag Protect Jungkook and hashtag Thank You Taehyung trending worldwide. Big Hit's silence spoke volumes, but it was clear the fans were on BTS's side. The battle for BTS's identity had only just begun. The following days were tense. BTS was on the brink of collapse. The pressure from Big Hit CEO grew unbearable, but Taehyung and Jungkook stood united. Behind the scenes, whispers spread like wildfire. The higher-ups at Big Hit grew more impatient with the two members' defiance, but neither Jungkook nor Taehyung wavered. They had made their stand, and now there was no turning back. In the midst of this internal war, fans worldwide began to rally behind the two rebellious members. Hashtags like hashtag Protect Jungkook and hashtag Thank You Taehyung trended, flooding social media with messages of support. ARMY's response was overwhelming, expressing loyalty not just to BTS, but to the real, unfiltered versions of the members they had always supported. Fans urged Big Hit to listen to their voices. The situation escalated when Big Hit executives warned that they might pull BTS from major endorsements if Jungkook and Taehyung didn't comply with a new concept. It was clear now, the battle wasn't only about a comeback concept. It was a fight for control. Taehyung, ever calm, said to Jungkook, "This isn't about us anymore. It's about the integrity of BTS. We can't be anyone else." Jungkook nodded, his own fear slowly transforming into determination. The thought of losing themselves to Big Hit's demands was unbearable. Then came the turning point. A public statement from Big Hit's CEO threatened to push BTS into a new direction, one that would erase the very essence of who they were. It was a direct attack on their artistry, and it broke something in the group. That was when Taehyung, always the quiet rebel, finally spoke up to the rest of the members. "If they make us change, I walk. This isn't just about Jungkook, it's about all of us." With that, the other members who had quietly supported Taehyung and Jungkook finally voiced their support. The group stood united, a singular force against the pressure from their agency. Big Hit, recognizing the growing unrest within BTS and their loyal fan base, finally caved. The agency announced that the comeback concept would be adjusted to allow the members to have more creative control, returning to a more authentic direction that respected their individualities. As the final decision was made, the relief was palpable. The members of BTS, united in their beliefs, had won, not just for themselves, but for their fans who had stood with them every step of the way. But even as the cameras flashed and the excitement buzzed, Jungkook and Taehyung knew one thing for sure. They had changed something fundamental in their world. They had fought for their authenticity, and it had cost them everything. But in the end, it had been worth it. The new music video that followed their victory became one of BTS's most successful releases. The group, more united than ever, had proven that no matter the forces against them, they would always stand together, true to themselves and true to their fans. And from that moment, the world knew BTS would never back down.